And thank you so much for that really, really insightful conversation there with Megan and Agnes from Louis Vuitton. How is everybody? You good? Are you good? Come on. We are just going to wait a few moments before our next conversation. A really, really insightful conversation with Amanda Cassett and G-Money, Ian Rogers, and Pierre Nicholas, who you already heard from this morning. So the guys are just getting set up now. Will be a minute or so, and I'll come back up and introduce them. But take a breath, and we're looking forward to keeping things moving. Thanks so much. So they'll be coming out now. Here we go. Right. So my pleasure to introduce Amanda Cassett, Ian Rogers from Ledger, G-Money from 9DCC, and Pierre Nicholas, who you all heard from earlier today. Welcome onto the stage, guys, and thank you for your patience, everyone.
Hi, everybody. We could talk about Kanye. Power was a great track. They're just finishing the mic attachment, the Britney Spears mic. This is where I say, welcome to Taco Bell. Would you like to try our Gordita value meal? Good. Welcome to Paris, everybody.
This on?
Yes. I'm living in that 21st century.
I'm living in that 21st century, doing something mean to it. Do it better than anybody you ever seen. Do it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Cassett. I'm the founder and CEO of Serotonin, the Web3 native marketing agency. Really grateful to NFT Paris for having us here to talk about digital luxury. First, would love to have our panelists introduce themselves. Ian?
Hello again, everyone. My name is Ian Rogers. I moved here to Paris a little more than 8 years ago to work at LVMH. I spent the first 20 years of my career doing digital music, Winamp, Yahoo Music, Beats Music, Apple Music, and then was the chief digital officer at LVMH, which was really a fun thing to do. And 3 years ago, I moved over to Ledger. So at Ledger, we are the leaders in security for digital assets. Our belief is that humans will have a lot of digital assets in their lives in the future, and that self-custody is important. You know, not giving our identities over to three big companies or giving our identities to the three big companies is hopefully not the future of humanity, and digital ownership is. But to do that, you need security and you need self-custody. So that's who we are.
And I'm G-Money, founder of 9DCC, overall NFT advocate, and CryptoPunk.
Very cool. So let's get started talking about digital luxury. What is luxury in a digital context? How is it different from physical fashion and physical brands? Is it mostly the demographics that are different? How? Oh, we got our fourth.
Hey, man.
Good morning.
Sorry, guys.
We just went around and did intros. Do you want to do yours, and then we'll jump in?
Yeah, so I think I made an intro already this morning. So I'm Pierre, CEO and co-founder at Ariani.
Parfait.
Merci.
So we were just starting to chat about how digital luxury is different from the physical world. We're obviously here in Paris, the storied home of the physical luxury world. What's different about luxury in a digital context? Maybe starting with Ian.
I don't think it's different, is the thing. I think that seeing a difference or saying something, which I've heard from my luxury colleagues in the past, well, that can't be craft because it's digital, or that isn't, you know, how can it be when it's digital? I don't think future generations will have that same hang-up or hurdle. I actually think it's the opposite. I think that people in luxury are people who have been explaining the value, or the question asked is, why would someone spend $3,000 on a handbag, or why would someone spend $50,000 on a wristwatch? And if you really examine the reasons, they are exactly the same reasons that you might spend that amount of money on a digital artifact. It's something where you appreciate the craft, you want to be a part of the small group of people who appreciate that object. You believe the value will go at least sideways, if not up. I mean, nobody buys a luxury wristwatch to tell the time, right? And the reasons that you do buy a luxury wristwatch are the same reasons that you might buy an NFT that has exactly the same value. So my belief is that 20 years from now, fully 50% of all luxury purchases will be digital. Probably 100% of them will come with something digital. At the very least, a proof of purchase or a proof of ownership. I think that exactly how we get there is the point that's unclear to me. We have, I think in 2002, it was obvious to me that the future was streaming music, but I couldn't have predicted the iPhone, or that the company that would lead it would come from Sweden. Like, these were total wild cards in my book, but the eventuality was obvious, and I think we're kind of in that same place.
I think the mental hurdle for people in my generation and older who are physical world natives to get over is the artificiality of the scarcity. When we're talking about physical watches or physical handbags, there are real materials with real costs that go into making it. And in a digital context, it can feel like the rarity, or how limited the run is artificial. How do we get over that?
But that's also what I mean by saying that it's something that future generations won't have, because the reality is that anyone on the planet, any human being can verify the scarcity of that digital item, and yet when Hublot tells you there's only 250 of those watches made, you take their word for it, right? And so it is actually, digital items on the blockchain are more provably scarce than, let's say you bought a photographic print, and it's number 2 of 20. Well, that's you trusting the photographer that they didn't make another 2 of 20. So,
what do you think, G?
Yeah, no, I definitely totally agree. And I think a lot of the times I think about how I came into the space, and it was through playing games like Fortnite. And something as simple as seeing an older skin, which is more rare because there were less people playing, signified something about that player. In Fortnite's case, that player was probably really good because they've been playing for a minute. But I think we've seen this so much in video games already, where these rare skins do have value, even though it's technically artificial, but it has value because of the story that it tells. And I think what you're going to see over the next 10 to 20 years is that storytelling is going to go from craft making and the art of making something of a luxury product from a physical sense into more of a digital story, right? And I think we're starting to see the transitions of that, but I think it happens gradually as today's teenagers become tomorrow's consumers.
Pierre, what do you think? Is this transition being caused by today's digital native teenagers becoming a larger demo?
No, I think the big question is, what's going to be the connection between the different worlds? People still love to interact with real physical things, and G's collection that is showcased today shows that. So are we going from buying amazing things and then having digital things on top? Is the starting point and the first touch point, is it going to be the digital one, and then we go to have something physical? And what's the link in between? So that's the first question. I think the path is unclear. How are we going to interact with physical goods, or how are we going to interact with digital goods to come back to the physicality? That's for me a big question. The second question is going to be craftsmanship. Luxury is about craftsmanship. It's about scarcity of materials, but it's about ancestral know-hows to cater to materials. Are we going to see that in the digital space with the same level of exceptionality and exclusiveness? And I think when you go to Bright Moments, like the exhibition that is happening right now, you see the beginning of that, but it's only for art. Is it touching the world of consumption in a way, and not collection. I think that's going to be another thing. And then the third is ownership, because today anything digitally fashionable is centralized. It's on Fortnite, it's on Roblox. You don't own it. And these platforms, I mean, digital fashion exists already. It's a huge industry, but people don't own things. Is there enough incentive for these platforms to transfer the ownership to people? I really don't know. I don't think so.
Super interesting. I love that point about the physical and the digital and how we still have to figure out that link, because the blockchain obviously doesn't have a hand with which to reach out into the world and grab onto physical objects. So it comes down to creating incentives to drive those links. But in terms of where this space is going, I think all of us feel that there's something inevitable here about owning digital luxury items. But what does that actually look like? What does a world look like where this has been fully realized? What that we're doing here is starting to get product market fit. Who are the leaders in driving that? Maybe, G, I'd love to get your vision with your recent launch.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and I'll just walk through the process of how I was thinking about 90cc, right? And my first and foremost thought was, as a consumer, I would like to know how scarce something is when I buy it. And I would like to know that it's real if I were to buy it from somebody else, without having to go to an authenticator, without having, all these friction points that I think currently exist in the system today. And how do you make that easier for the consumer? Because that's what I want. And so that was, why we were like, okay, let's chip the product. And I think that today that's probably table stakes, right? I think anything that's chipped is like, cool, this is a certificate of authenticity that travels with it. What I think we found a lot of product market fit with is gamifying that experience, whether it's by forming community in real life and taking this social graph that people have in the real world and bringing it on chain and then unlocking the benefits of that. And to be perfectly honest, like us at 90cc, we are just starting to turn that on. Like we haven't even kind of showcased the power of that, but I think everybody on this stage understands the power of blockchain and what happens when that information is decentralized and it's out there, and the incentive mechanisms that can begin to unlock by other communities as you collaborate and interact. And I think that to me is the stuff that I feel like we have found the beginnings of product market fit around, and really just trying to lean into that gamification. And exactly what you were saying before, like creating these incentive mechanisms that push people in that direction without necessarily financializing it and saying, here's $5 to wear the hat, right? Because the second you don't pay somebody that money, then they're like, all right, well, I'm not gonna wear the hat, right? But like, how you create a fun experience for people to want to be part of the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I was just going to ask the audience to participate in it, right? I think, the thing about living in the future is it's cheating. Like when you're living in the future, you can see the future. So I think that they should be trying what you're doing, right? Like as you said, you're just getting started doing it, but buy some 90cc gear, participate in the ecosystem, see what it feels like, because you'll immediately see what it is and what it isn't, right? And then it'll evolve. There's a stand over here from Tram Paris, and they have these pieces that are generative glass from Martin Grasser. My wife and I bought one of those pieces, and what's interesting about it, again, in spirit of living in the future, having both the digital and the physical, it actually changed my relationship with some of my physical art, where I now wish I had the digital provenance and I could put it in my, gallery.so, and I again, that's what I mean, and I just implore the audience to don't just listen to people talk about this stuff. You've got to play the game. You have to collect, feel, buy things like 90cc and play along, because then you can actually comment on what it is and what it isn't. LV was just on stage. I'm a collector in that because I wanted to know, what does this feel like, and I'm in the Discord and I see what people don't like, and now I see that they were very happy by the event that they hosted on Wednesday night. So you start to feel what works. You can't be a spectator and actually understand this.
Yeah, I think when you think product market fit, adoption, you need to think about scale. the place where we see scale is the watchmaking industry. Like things that are durable, with a real secondary market and repairable, that's where it makes so much sense to put that on chain, that we see an entire industry moving at very fast pace. I was saying this morning, it's going to be 30% of new premium watch sold on chain by the end of 2024. And the thing is, if you do that and if you ask people to understand what a wallet is, to sign transaction, it's not happening. There's no product market fit outside of this community if we don't make things seamless, take a click out. And so how do you take a click out when you want to empower people? And that's the paradox. We're trying to use something that is made for scarcity, hoping that it's going to scale for many. And we're going to try to use something that empowers people, which should require them to act differently, by making it easier. And so that's when product market fit might be difficult to define. Where and how in how much time will we see millions of people using cool apps powered on chain, but without having to understand that you need to sign a transaction, own a wallet, or whatever? Or do they have to understand? Which is probably not the case.
So to summarize, we see a few different things going on. We see the world getting more chips and sensors in it, and that's creating new experiences for people that I think all of us have an opportunity to start playing with. Then we see the evolution of basically certificates of authenticity coming on chain. Some of them have their own identities that we can call digital twins. And then we see, fashion starting to look more like games and bringing aesthetics from the digital world into the physical world and into mixed reality. But coming from LVMH and working with a number of big brands, we're in another Web3 crypto cycle right now. What are the incentives for luxury brands to come into Web3? Do you think they're cyclic? Do you think they're correlated with the market? Do you think it's going to be different this time? Or do you think they're coming in with a different perspective?
Yeah, I think the incentive must be strongly correlated to the core business model. A luxury brand is a craftsmanship company that is born from creating amazing, scarce product and selling them. So all of that, whether you talk about making this digital or you talk about revenues from secondhand, it's almost out of the scope of the raison d'être. So depending on the culture of the company, this is the reasons and the incentives are going to be very different. Are we trying to diversify revenues by embracing the fact that people are more and more digital and we want to sell things to them that are in line with their new way of life? Are we trying to diversify revenues by being involved in post-purchase, second-hand, and different service models? But in any situation, the incentive will be economic. And that's why some brands that were here last year are not here today, because they did that in a way. They embraced this to be part of a hype, and then they did not think enough about the economic impact and return of what they were doing. Then they spent money, didn't get return, and now they stopped. So it's an economy we're in, so everything has to be built for economic efficiency.
Incentives for big brands to come on chain, why they're doing it, is it different this time?
I think that, one, it's cyclical. So I will say, from the conversations that I've had, I think they're beginning to become interested again, but it's not the fervor that it was in 2021, where people are like, I need to do something tomorrow, right? Like in 7 hours, like this needs to go live. And I think people are, one, they've learned a little bit more about the technology, and they're trying to figure out how to do it. I think personally, one of the things, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, I think one of the things that crypto could do better as an industry is gamify but not financialize. And I think financial games are very interesting to a very small number of people, but I think gamification is something that's naturally human. So how do you take that gamification and not outright turn it into a financial game, but turn it into an enjoyable game, right? Like, we all have our favorite brands, that we wear and sometimes people are walking billboards for that have no real gamification or reward other than the fact that you enjoy the quality of the product, you enjoy what the brand stands for and whatnot. And so I think that this next evolution of, let's say, consumer crypto is probably a little bit more of gamification without the financialization. I think there will be some of it, but me personally, I'm trying to stay away from that as much as possible because I think it messes up the incentive mechanism.
There's
do you
maybe there's maybe the question of community as well, and again the paradox around community. A brand's community, should it be as large as possible? Should it be the masses, the people who own, don't own, want it, desire it? Or should it be reduced to people with rights who can go inside a token-gated chat on Discord? What does that mean and how? And it's so important for brands to build their brand equities around communities that these tools, again, are questioned around their use. What do you think, Jan? Mass or access?
I think it really depends on the brand, right? I mean, and I think because if you look at it, the difference between a watch brand, which could be a much smaller community of like-minded individuals, all the way out to I'm on the board of Dr. Martens, and Dr. Martens, I would say, is a collection of communities itself. Think about the customers of Rimowa. They literally span every kind of aspect of not only luxury. And I think that to G's point, I think that, look, every technological revolution has a boom and a bust and then 30 years of sustained growth. And that's been true for the last couple hundred years. And I don't think this one will be any exception. And I think the reasons that you said around usability, I'm not sure in this cycle we really get the kind of consumer adoption that we all dreamed of in 2021. I think it probably does build around communities, though. I always say there's no such thing as crypto. Crypto is a collection of communities. There's a large and vibrant Bitcoin community. There's a large and vibrant Ethereum community. There's a small CryptoPunks community. There's, LV is building a community around VIA. I think that is what will happen, in the short term. You'll have these smaller communities will figure out the user experiences, and it will grow over the next 15 years. And that's what I would point to. I mean, look, I started working on streaming music in the early 90s. And we launched Apple Music in 2015. It took 25 years to get from, oh, wow, this is the future, to this is in the hands of every consumer. And I think that that's okay. I think that we all need to be sure that we're going on that time horizon. I mean, LVMH did e-luxury in 1999. And then they kind of walked away from e-commerce and .com for a number of years. And that was smart for them. That was not a mistake. I would argue that had they gone on Amazon in 2001, that would have been a terrible idea, right? So then when in 2015 to 2020 we pushed quite hard for consumer experiences on the internet, it was the right time. And we grew them in the right way. So I think there's no need to be in a rush. One thing that I take away from what has been said here on the stage is this is inevitable. Digital ownership is a big part of the lives of people in the future. And we have a long way to go to get there. I would actually say it's not that long. It's probably somewhere between 10 and 15 years before this is totally mainstream. And we're just going to build brick by brick between now and then. I would also argue this is the fun part, right? The 90s and the 2000s were much more fun days on the internet than when you have a consumer internet of 5.3 billion people, right? That's when it gets, totally commodified and much less fun. So this building part, I think, is the super fun part.
To build on the combo that we were just having of how big do you go? Do you go small or do you go big? And it's very interesting because I think I'll use my community as an example where it started off as Admit One, which is a small community. It's now gotten bigger through 90cc with putting more garments out there and people joining into that community. But I think a lot of it is experimentation as well. And I'm just going to use something that I was experimenting with for the last 2 weeks, which is Farcaster. And they introduced these frames that allow these mints. And again, like I think a lot of it becomes for these brands of like, what is top of funnel, right? And so the way that I was experimenting with it with 90cc was I would do these subsidized mints on Zora that are free. All you have to do is literally press the mint button. And that's obviously somebody that's mildly interested in the brand. And then we did, I think about 10 or 20 of those, 10 or 15 of those. And then we're going to go back and look at that data and be like, the people that minted them multiple times obviously have a little bit more interest. So then how do you start taking them down the funnel of getting them from mildly interested to a little more interested to buying something to becoming a core community member? And I think that that's really the interesting thing about having this on chain is that you can now see this on chain and you can find these people and like target them and retarget them and figure out how to bring them into the community as opposed to having proprietary data through credit card transactions that you have to pay a lot of money in order to get access to.
Well, there's probably another paradox here because some things were fine to have them on chain and public, but maybe not our lives entirely. And
Oh, for sure.
This system is today way too transparent, and even for brands, you don't want to start distributing data to users that can be used by your number one competitor. I'm fine flexing my NFTs. I'm not fine flexing what's in my closet, or at least not all the time. Maybe I'm fine showing it or inviting, but we're going to have to think about the way we protect users also in their privacy. Because if at the end we've built something that ends up being even worse than Web 2, I'm not sure we would have succeeded.
I think that points to the fact that the infrastructure itself is also evolving in Web3 and crypto. There are new innovations for allowing there to be private transactions on the public chain. And I loved your points about how the blockchain is really the best CRM ever. And it might not be the sexiest use case, but just the fact that that data exists on chain and you can retarget those people without collecting any of their personal data. Talk about GDPR compliance and also just the convenience and efficiency of retargeting people on the platform where they transacted and seeing all of that history.
And the thing that people control this data. Because what's great is that you can read, you can interact, you can target. But if I transfer this NFT, I don't have it anymore. I take myself out of the cohort, which is so much easier than with any other multiple centralized databases to whom I would have to ask, can you take my data out and please stop? So I think this question of data control is just amazing, all about the ownership.
We also have these other platforms that are emerging, and I don't want to spend too much time on them, but we just had the Apple Vision Pro launch, and we have a new vision of what mixed reality could look like. We have AI tools, we have games coming and coinciding with luxury goods. What happens here? Where's the vision of where Web3, gamification, and AI, mixed reality, how does this all converge?
Oh man, you use so many.
Every buzzword. How does this all come together? What does this thing look like?
Yeah, I can take AI. I think AI is making everything so hard to prove. I think the intersection between Web3 and AI is guaranteeing the provenance of this video, of this image. Today, you can't trust anything that you see on the internet. Any voice, any video, any image might have been, built by AI. I think this is going to cause huge issues, dramas, democratic issues, like things that can touch everyone's lives. And I think the fact that we're able to verify the provenance, the authenticity of a digital content, thanks to Web3, is probably the only way to survive from this wave of AI.
Yeah, I mean, if AI brings digital abundance, and blockchains deliver digital scarcity, you need both. There's a great tweet from Sam Altman in 2021 where he says something like this. But think about it. It could be even more profound than that, I think, because go back to 2003. And if you asked any rational person who knew the ecosystem at that point, which is more likely, will Microsoft shrink the personal computer into the phone, or will Apple upscale the iPod into a phone, right? The Microsoft was a more rational choice, and that's obviously not what happened, right? We ended up with iPhone and Android, not a Windows phone. there's something similar here, where if you look at, there was this exciting device at CES this year, the Rabbit R1, which is an AI device. If you haven't seen it, you basically talk to it, and it answers you at AI. But think about the difficulty in the Web 2 world of asking that device, book me a flight to New York City, right? I mean, what is it going to do? It's going to use Skyscanner. It's going to basically an agent that's going to like use Skyscanner, and it needs to log into the airline site as you, et cetera. Like it's a mess. AI agents are quite good at navigating Web 2 sites, but there's your personal data is stored in a bunch of websites, like spread out across the internet right now, right? That's what it works. It's why we use things like 1Password to manage our passwords. Now imagine if instead all of your identity was owned by you, on chain, protected by your private key. That little R1 application becomes much easier, actually, because I now have digital payments. I now have digital identity. I now have all of my preferences of, my kind of airline points and where I want to sit and all of that stuff. So I think in that kind of Microsoft versus iPod way, if you're starting from digital ownership instead of Web 2, that these kind of applications that the Rabbit R1 points to are actually much easier, and that might be what we get.
I think that's a great vision to end on. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Ian, G-Money, Pierre. This has been wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Amazing discussion. Thank you so much, guys. Really, really valuable.